The sixth EU-AU summit is ongoing in Brussels, Belgium. It kicked off on Thursday with a focus on forging more partnerships between the European Union and Africa. Key issues for discussion at the summit, which will end today, include the financing for sustainable and inclusive growth, climate change and energy transition, digital and transport, connectivity and infrastructure. Then we also have the issue of peace, security and governance, and then private sector support as well as economic integration. Others are economic education, culture and vocational training, migration and mobility, agriculture and sustainable development, and health systems and vaccine production. All of these at the EU-AU summit. So joining me now on Zoom is Global Affairs Analyst Collins Nweke, joining us from Belgium. All right, Collins, good morning. It's good to have you join me now this morning.
My pleasure to be with you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, this is the sixth EU-AU summit that is holding, the last held in 2017. And the point there is, one would look at the impact of all of these summits that have been held over the years. What would you say the impacts have been for Africa and maybe for the EU?
Well, let me start with the impact, on the European Union, because the impact here is a lot more obvious in terms of increased business for the European, business people as a consequence of, some of the deals that were made. Now, as far as Africa is concerned, I cannot, there aren't very visible impacts, because, one of the ways to measure it is how far have Africans fared since 2017. Yes, well, there are a number of private sector movements in terms of increase the volume of businesses, but as a matter of fact, take the issue of insurance for businesses, as just one single example in terms of regulatory framework as they relate to doing business between the EU and Africa. They've actually become even more difficult. And also, when people talk about, when out here in Europe, they talk about migration, it is always looked at from a very, very negative perspective, whereas the truth of the matter is that about 96% of Africans living in Europe live here legally, are gainfully employed, doing businesses, contributing to the economy, the social, realities, the culture, and all of that. So it's only about, 3 to 4% that are illegal migrants. But you see, the way it is talked about, the way, they project it in policy papers and all of that, you will really think that all Africans walking the streets in Europe are, illegal migrants. Yet, in 2017, it was a cardinal point of, of the discussion in Ivory Coast. Okay, now has that, been improved? No, it actually got worse in terms of the negativity. So I can go on and on and on, but I'm going to leave it at that with the conclusion that, I can only expect, I can only hope that when they say that the sixth session, which is ongoing now, is going to be a departure from the paternalistic, approach, the, colonial mentality that has actually underlined some of these relationships. That this year is going to mark a departure from that. I can only expect that will be the case, but frankly speaking, the hope isn't very much. What I do hope very sincerely is that, African leaders will get a bit more purposeful in terms of knowing exactly what they want and pushing for it.
All right. Now, there is a long list of some of the issues that are meant to be discussed in Brussels. And when all of these issues come together and they're looking to way forward for them, a lot of people are still of the school of thought that the relationship between Africa and Europe is lopsided in such a way that the African continent doesn't seem to get the fair share of the partnership that they come together when they sit down to, agree and sign memorandum of understanding and sign some papers of agreements here and there regarding the two continents. What do you say in this regard?
Yeah, what I say is exactly what you have just summarized, Mike, which is that, in all of these deals, the African leaders appear to take the posture of, well, they are doing us a favor because up until this moment, and I believe that the conversation is now evolving, it had always been more emphasis on aid rather than trade. Now, we have been told that as a consequence of the 170 billion euros that has been earmarked as the budget to finance, the New Deal that is being envisaged, that there will be, quite some changes. But you see, the African leaders have got to begin to see this as a partnership of mutual benefit. Now, Africa is not being done a favor by the relationship they are having with Europe. As a matter of fact, the economy out here is saturated. The new frontier is Africa. Take also the population pyramid as another example. Whereas here, we are having a bit of, a massive sense of a graying, workforce. In Africa, you have a large chunk of young people, vibrant, mostly educated, with, lots of opportunities for the future. So you see, the migration that is looked at negatively now, as a matter of fact, is actually beginning to happen in such a way that in some sectors are threatened here. They don't find people to work in those sectors. So where do they look to? Africa. But African leaders have now got to see this as, a win-win situation, and that way they will strengthen their negotiating position to then enable them, to get something out of the relationship.
All right. Now, a lot of analysts have talked about the issue of synergy between African countries. Heads of state, of course, the African Union is there, and then the sub-regional groups like the ECOWAS and the others are there. But when it comes to speaking and acting and taking a front for the continent, there seem to be, fragments here and there that impacts or impedes on their ability to negotiate and bargain some of the things when they meet other, leaders from other continents. What do you make of this?
Well, it is part of that plea for African leaders to get a bit more purposeful, because the example that you have just given is nothing different from, take for example, the European Union at the apex of the pyramid, and then you have the Schengen, for example, the Schengen group of countries, or the Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. These are all subgroups within the European Union. But do their aims and objectives run at cross purpose? Certainly not, because these are clearly defined. There are, sanctions for when people overstep their bounds, and so when they get purposeful and get everything well organized. So in Africa, I think a reverse is the case. Sometimes you see a whole lot of duplicity in the things that ECOWAS and African Union does. And so the time has now come, of course, for them to begin to get it right. Now, one can look at, for example, the African, free trade area free trade agreement, and say, well, there seem to be light at the end of the tunnel, and I do hope that they can keep it on. There is this big futuristic plan that the president of Rwanda is chairing. Vision 2063, I suppose. So far, they have shown signs of, knowing what they are doing in terms of streamlining some of these policies that run across purpose, so that they become much more productive.
All right. The Agenda 2063 of the African Union is something countries and individuals are looking forward to try to create a change and a paradigm shift. Maybe just in 1 minute, what should we expect from as the outcome of this meeting that is going on, or this summit that is going on in Brussels?
Well, there are quite a bit of expectations. I mean, you have read out, a wish list of the thematic areas that are going to be discussed. In total, 7 of them, which is robust, because in the last session in Ivory Coast, there were only just 4 thematic areas. Now, expectation is one thing, but hope for something meaningful is another. While the expectation is many, I do not think that there is very much hope that things are going to be done differently, except the African leaders show themselves as people living in 2022 rather than in 1960, pre-independence, when that colonial mentality was always there. Now, Africa has a lot to offer, and I hope that Europe will learn from that. Take, for example, the COVID-19 crisis, where it was simply forgotten that a number of African countries, Nigeria, Senegal, and a few others, actually handled the COVID-19 so very well that Europe had something to learn from it, because Africa, those countries derive from their experience handling the Ebola crisis. All right. Okay. But it never happened. I mean, they just looked at, Africa, these are people that need help, and then that paternalistic diplomacy just continues to thrive.
All right.
I hope this will then mark a change to that.
It's okay. Well, we look forward to the best in all of this. Colleagues, Nweke, thank you very much for talking to us on TVC Breakfast.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Mike.
Thank you.